When you look at the global defense and security landscape, it's hard not to be struck by the sheer scale of it all. I mean, 2025 projections put spending at a massive $2.68 trillion globally,
Wow.
with a growth rate of almost 5%. It really highlights the momentum we're seeing in this sector. And with numbers like that, certain companies inevitably come to mind. BAE Systems is definitely one of those at the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. BAE Systems is a technology-led enterprise
Right.
operating in defense, aerospace, and security with a presence in over 40 countries. And with around 107,000 employees, their influence and reach are really global.
Yeah, for sure. So for this deep dive, we've got some really interesting analysis. We're going to be looking at BAE Systems through the lens of value investing to really understand this business as an investment. We're going to be dissecting their operations, evaluating their leadership, scrutinizing their financials, and really getting a sense of what the market expects from them. And here's a figure that immediately caught my eye: 77.8 billion pounds. That is their current order backlog.
Wow.
A record high. I mean, just think of the potential revenue that's locked in there.
Yeah, and that 77.8 billion pound backlog gives BAE Systems significant revenue visibility, which is crucial in an industry with such long lead times, and really gives a strong indication of the potential for future earnings and stability.
Exactly. So to unpack all of this, we're going to be taking a structured approach.
All right?
We'll start by understanding the core of their business. Then we'll assess the management team, followed by a deep dive into the crucial financial metrics. In the second half, we'll explore how the market perceives BAE Systems, take a look at the key shareholders, assess the various risks they face, and wrap up with our conclusions, along with a final thought to consider. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Let's get started by understanding the fundamentals of BAE Systems business.
Absolutely. So, Chapter 1, business understanding. Let's jump right in.
Okay.
In the simplest terms, what does BAE Systems actually do, and how do they generate revenue?
Well, their business model really revolves around securing these substantial long-term contracts with governments and military organizations worldwide. We're talking about the design and development of complex defense systems through to their manufacture and long-term maintenance. These are typically multi-year commitments involving really significant financial outlays. It's not just hardware either. A large portion of their revenue also stems from advanced technology and electronic systems like sophisticated radar, secure communications networks, cybersecurity solutions, and intelligence gathering tools. They cater to both military and, in some instances, commercial clients.
So it's much more than just building tanks and fighter jets these days.
Yeah, much more than that, that's right.
Okay.
A crucial and recurring revenue stream for them comes from the continuous support and maintenance services they provide. You have to think about the highly specialized nature of these advanced military systems. They need constant attention, technical assistance, and very specific training, which BAE Systems provides to ensure their operational effectiveness throughout their lifespan.
It makes sense.
Another key aspect is their strategic collaboration with international partners. These partnerships are essential for joint development projects and for gaining access to new markets globally.
Right, sharing resources and expanding their reach. Now, your analysis breaks down their operations into 5 key segments. Could you give us a quick rundown of those?
Sure. The first segment is electronic systems, focusing on those advanced technologies we just talked about.
Okay.
The second segment is platforms and services, which deals with the actual vehicles and physical equipment. Then we have air, focusing on military aircraft. Next, we have maritime, covering everything naval. And finally, cyber and intelligence, addressing that ever-increasing need for digital security and information analysis.
Got it. So they're covering all the bases. Now, geographically speaking, where does the bulk of their revenue come from?
The United States is their largest single market by far, generating around 44% of their total revenue. The UK comes in second at 26%, followed by Saudi Arabia at 10%, and Australia at 4%. The remaining 16% is spread across various other international markets. This does highlight a reliance on the U.S. defense budget. But going back to what you mentioned at the start, that massive 77.8 billion pound order backlog really offers a significant level of reassurance.
Right. That backlog does give a sense of financial security going forward.
It provides significant revenue visibility and stability. But it's also crucial to acknowledge that heavy reliance on government contracts, particularly in the U.S., exposes them to potential shifts in government policies and spending priorities, something that investors should keep an eye on.
For sure. Okay, so we have a good grasp of their business model and where the money comes from. Let's talk products and services. What are some of their key offerings?
They have a really broad range of offerings. In the air domain, they are key partners in the Global Combat Air Program, GCAP, a collaborative effort to develop the next generation of fighter jets. They also supply advanced avionics and are heavily involved in research and development for aircraft electrification. On the land side, they provide vehicles like the Armored Multi-Purpose Vehicle, AMPV, which is a troop transport and combat support vehicle. It's interesting to note that they also have a presence in the commercial vehicles market and are developing electric propulsion systems for buses.
Interesting.
So there's some diversification into adjacent markets there. Their cyber and intelligence division provides crucial digital intelligence solutions for government clients. They're also leading suppliers of Link 16 products for tactical data links and secure communication systems.
Okay.
In the maritime domain, they're involved in the design and construction of naval guns, combat ships, submarines, and warships. And they're also strategically expanding their capabilities in space-related technologies and solutions.
That's a very comprehensive portfolio. They're covering all the key domains.
Yeah, they are. And we shouldn't forget their support services, which are also essential. They offer comprehensive fleet management, logistics, maintenance repair, upgrade programs, and specialized training for the personnel operating these complex systems. It's that end-to-end approach.
Right.
From design and manufacture all the way through life support. It's a big part of their value proposition and generates a recurring revenue stream. This diverse portfolio also serves as a risk mitigation strategy. If spending in one sector dips, growth in another area, such as cybersecurity or space, can potentially offset that.
Makes sense. Having all your eggs in one basket is never a good idea. So where do they stand in the industry overall? What's their market position and scale?
Well, BAE Systems is one of the leading global aerospace and defense corporations. Their operational scale is huge. They have roughly 107,000 employees spread across over 40 countries. They're the biggest defense contractor in both the UK and Australia and rank among the top 10 in the US. And as we've already discussed, that's their primary revenue source. They have a significant operational presence in the US, UK, Saudi Arabia, and Australia, highlighting their influence in key strategic regions.
Right.
This scale allows them to compete effectively for those large international contracts.
Okay, so they have the resources and infrastructure, the global reach. So what's their core value proposition in this very, very complex landscape?
Essentially, it boils down to delivering those advanced technology-led solutions in defense, aerospace, and security. They really emphasize that lifecycle commitment from the drawing board to long-term support and sustainment. Ultimately, they're aiming to significantly enhance military capabilities and contribute to national security for their government clients. And their core stated purpose: serving, equipping, and protecting those who serve and protect society.
Right. Well, that gives us a great foundation for understanding their business. Let's move on to Chapter 2, Management Evaluation. Who's steering the ship and how well are they doing it?
Yeah, evaluating the quality of management is, crucial in value investing. So looking at their recent performance, BAE Systems has delivered strong financial results in 2024. They saw a 14% increase in sales, reaching £28.335 billion, and their underlying EBIT, also a 14% rise to £3.015 billion. They generated strong free cash flow and also secured a lot of new orders.
Sounds promising.
This follows a consistent upward trend.
Okay.
In the 3 years leading up to December 2023, they achieved 20% growth in sales, expanded their profit margins, and maintained strong cash conversion rates.
So that upward trend does point to solid leadership. Who's at the helm right now?
The current CEO is Charles Woodburn. He brings over 27 years of experience in defense, aerospace, and even oil and gas. So a deep understanding of complex and heavily regulated industries. His guidance, coupled with the consistent financial results, suggests a capable and effective management team.
Okay. Now, how have they navigated challenging situations in the past? What's their crisis response track record like?
Their digital intelligence division has proven to be very capable when responding to major cybersecurity incidents.
Okay.
They've managed to contain large-scale ransomware attacks, demonstrating their expertise in tackling these complex digital threats and restoring operational capabilities. Their participation in the UK government's Cyber Incident Response Pilot Program also highlights the trust that government agencies place in their abilities.
Cybersecurity is a huge concern these days, so having that expertise is a definite asset.
Absolutely.
Now, how about their transparency in terms of operations and communications?
Well, BAE Systems states that they aim to be as open as possible in their communications, while also protecting sensitive commercial information and national security considerations. Their communication policy focuses on the best interests of the company as a whole, while also engaging in internal and external consultations. Their mindful TM technology is a good example. aiming to enhance the transparency of their machine learning systems for users. It shows their commitment to clarity, even in complex technological domains. Right. What about their ethical reputation, especially important in this industry? BAE Systems is publicly committed to high ethical standards in all their operations. They have a zero-tolerance policy towards corruption. Okay. They've implemented a global code of conduct. They have mandatory ethics training for all employees. And they have an ethics helpline for confidential reporting of concerns. However, it is important to acknowledge their past record, which includes allegations of corruption related to arms deals and criticism over business dealings with countries facing human rights concerns. The company does claim to have strengthened their ethical standards and compliance programs since then. But those past issues are relevant context that investors should be aware of.
Absolutely. So how do they allocate their financial resources? What's their approach to capital allocation?
They have a few key priorities. Investing in core business operations is a major one. This includes achieving operational excellence, enhancing their competitive edge, improving efficiency, and fostering technological advancements.
Okay.
That involves increased investments in R&D, upgrades to facilities, and adoption of advanced manufacturing technologies. A good example is their £220 million investment in a new advanced technology factory in Rochester.
Right, keeping ahead of the curve.
Yeah. They also have a well-defined mergers and acquisitions strategy.
Okay.
The acquisition of BAE Aerospace in 2024 for $5.5 billion is a good example. This was a strategic move aimed at bolstering their presence in the space and mission systems sector.
Right.
They've also engaged in smaller, targeted bolt-on acquisitions. Kirintec in the area of electronic warfare and Eurostep for digital asset management are good examples.
Okay.
And they've also divested from non-core assets, like reducing their stake in Aristana.
So a blend of internal investment and strategic growth. Now, what about their approach to returning capital to shareholders?
Yeah, they've shown a commitment to returning capital to shareholders. In 2024, they repurchased 43 million of their own shares for £555 million. This followed the completion of over 90% of a £1.5 billion share buyback program that started in July 2022.
Wow.
And then they approved a further £1.5 billion share repurchase program in August 2023. Their dividend policy is also very shareholder-friendly. In 2024, they increased their total dividend by 10% to 33 pence per share. They typically distribute dividends twice a year.
Okay.
And they have a dividend reinvestment plan available for shareholders. It's worth highlighting that they've consistently increased their dividend payout for 20 consecutive years.
20 consecutive years. That really speaks to a commitment to delivering shareholder value.
Absolutely.
Finally, how about their return on invested capital? How efficiently are they generating returns?
Their latest 12-month ROIC is 10.8%, and their 5-year average is a solid 11.7%. However, there's been some variability in reported figures. The Q2 2024 figure was 6.98%, and other figures around 7% to 7.78% for different fiscal years.
Okay.
This fluctuation suggests we need to take a closer look at the underlying factors driving those changes in their financial reports. While the 5-year average shows a fairly consistent ability to generate returns on their investments, understanding those fluctuations is key to assessing the long-term sustainability of those returns.
So management is clearly focused on investing for growth while also returning value to shareholders. Let's dig deeper into Chapter 3, Financial Health, and look at the numbers.
All right, let's review some key financial metrics. As of March 2025, their market capitalization is around $59.22 billion, or between 45.76 and 46.31 billion pounds. Their price-to-earnings ratio is currently around 24 to 25 times their trailing 12-month earnings.
Okay.
Although there was a significant outlier at the end of 2022. As we've mentioned, their revenue growth has been strong, 14% increase in sales and total revenue for 2024, and they're projecting a 7% to 9% sales increase for 2025.
Those are pretty impressive growth figures. How about their profitability margins?
There's some variation in the reported gross profit margin, averaging around 12.7%, but one source reports a much higher 65.47%.
Oh.
Their operating profit margin has dipped slightly from 12% in 2021 to 9.28% in December 2024.
Right.
And their net profit margin has also slightly decreased to around 7.23% to 7.49%.
Okay, so what about their debt levels? What does their debt-to-equity ratio look like?
Their debt-to-equity ratio has been fluctuating. It was 0.72 as of June 30, 2024, up from 0.41 at the end of 2023. Other reported figures range from around 0.8 to 0.96. The recent increase is largely due to the financing for that BAE Aerospace acquisition.
Right, that makes sense. We talked about their cash generation earlier. Could you give us some specifics on their free cash flow?
Yeah, they reported 2,505 million pounds in free cash flow for 2024.
Okay.
And their current target for 2025 is to generate over 1.1 billion pounds. Other reports show figures around $3.78 billion or 2.8 billion pounds.
Okay.
Finally, their price-to-book ratio is around 4.0, which means the market is valuing their equity at a premium compared to their book value.
So they're profitable, they generate strong cash flow,
Yeah.
but they've seen a recent uptick in their debt.
That's right.
How consistent have their earnings been overall?
They've generally shown an upward trend in earnings over the past 5 years. Analyzing a 10-year period would give us a better idea of long-term consistency, but the available data does suggest improvement in profitability over the medium term.
Right. Now, their dividend growth record is very impressive. How about the stability of those payouts?
Well, as we highlighted earlier, BAE Systems has increased its dividend for 20 consecutive years. This long history of dividend growth is a strong sign of financial health, management's confidence in their future earnings, and their commitment to delivering value to shareholders.
For sure. How are they managing their debt obligations?
Their net debt was 4,945 million pounds at the end of 2024.
Okay.
That figure, as we discussed, is primarily because of the financing for the BAE Aerospace acquisition. It's worth noting that they have a strategic approach to managing their debt.
Right.
They diversify their funding sources, they stagger their debt maturities. That suggests responsible and proactive debt management. It's also interesting that their net debt actually decreased at the end of 2023,
Okay.
which shows prior efforts to reduce their leverage.
And how are they doing in terms of working capital management?
BAE Systems exhibits strong working capital efficiency.
Okay.
They have a negative working capital balance of 6,386 million pounds at the end of 2024. And they've maintained a consistent negative average working capital balance over the past 5 years, averaging around Manikou 0.682 billion pounds.
Okay.
This indicates very efficient cash flow management. They're collecting payments quickly, potentially negotiating longer payment terms with suppliers,
Got it.
which frees up cash for other strategic uses.
That's great. So that wraps up our look at BAE Systems' business operations, their management team, and their financial health. When we return after a short break, we'll dive into how the market views BAE Systems, their major shareholders, and the risks they face. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive on BAE Systems. We've already explored the fundamentals of their business, their management effectiveness, and their financial standing. Let's now shift our focus to Chapter 4, Market Sentiment. What's the current feeling towards the stock in the investment community?
While the overall market perception of BAE Systems stock has been pretty positive throughout 2025, there's been a noticeable upward trend in their stock price, reflecting growing confidence among investors.
Okay.
This aligns with the gains seen across the European defense sector. It's largely been driven by rising geopolitical tensions, especially after significant events like the Ukraine summit. These events have really fueled expectations of higher defense spending by governments.
So the global landscape is playing a big role in shaping market sentiment.
Yeah, definitely.
What are the analysts saying? What are their price targets for the stock?
The consensus rating is moderate buy,
Okay.
but there is some variation in the individual price targets.
The median price target is around 1,540.0 GBP, pretty close to the current trading price, suggesting limited immediate upside based on the average.
Right.
But some analysts are much more bullish. UBS has set a target of 2,450.80 GBP,
Wow.
and Morgan Stanley has issued a target of 2,027 GBP. Now, the consensus price target in US dollars is a bit more cautious,
Okay.
and the average one-year price target in UK pounds also points to a more moderate potential increase. It seems like there are differing opinions on the stock's future valuation.
But there's a bit of a mixed bag there in terms of analyst expectations.
Right.
What recent news or events might be influencing the stock price and the overall sentiment?
There's been a generally positive news flow around BAE Systems.
Yeah.
Several new contract wins have been announced, always good news for the market.
Right.
The collaboration with Ripcon USA to boost munitions supply is a notable development, as is their selection by NOAA for a space weather mission. It points to their expansion into new, potentially high-growth sectors. Their expansion in New York, focused on aircraft electrification, also highlights their commitment to future technologies. While their announcement about their best ship repair suppliers is good news for their supply chain, it probably doesn't have a direct impact on the stock price in the short term.
Right, good for the business, but maybe not a market mover.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed a significant increase in short interest for the stock. What's going on there?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Short interest in BAE Systems has jumped over 300%. That means more investors are betting that the stock price will go down.
Wow.
And despite the positive sentiment and moderate buy rating, this high short interest suggests some investors are concerned about the stock's current valuation.
Okay.
Perhaps they anticipate future challenges. It also raises the possibility of a short squeeze. If the price keeps rising unexpectedly, those who've shorted the stock might have to buy it back to cover their positions, pushing the price up even further.
So a bit of a contradiction there, increasing short interest despite the overall positive sentiment.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on.
Okay, let's move on to Chapter 5, Ownership Structure. Who are the main owners of BAE Systems?
That's where things get a little murky. There's some inconsistency in reported figures for institutional ownership. One source mentions a surprisingly low figure of 0.07%, which seems very unlikely for a company of this scale.
Right.
But another source reports a much more believable 26.99%. We need to verify those figures from multiple reputable sources to be sure.
Okay.
We do have some info on major institutional holders, though, including iShares, Income Fund of America, and Fidelity Investment Trust.
Right. Now, how about insider ownership? Do the management team and board hold a substantial stake in the company?
Insider ownership is also reported to be quite low, around 0.07%.
Okay.
And there have been recent reports of insider selling. The company president sold shares in March 2025. And there have been other selling activities by directors and principal decision makers, PDMRs, reported through the London Stock Exchange.
Right.
While insider selling can happen for various personal financial reasons, investors often watch these transactions closely for potential clues about management's views on the company's future.
Yeah, for sure. Now, is ownership concentrated in the hands of a few, or is it more widely distributed?
BAE Systems' ownership structure appears to be pretty diversified.
Okay.
A mix of institutional investors, retail shareholders, and individuals. iShares is mentioned as the largest single holder with around a 4.2% stake. This spread-out ownership can actually contribute to a more stable stock price as it limits the impact of any single large holder making big trading decisions.
Right. So how does corporate governance factor into all of this?
Well, BAE Systems has a clearly defined corporate governance framework based on the UK Corporate Governance Code. The board holds regular meetings, and responsibilities are delegated to committees like the Audit Committee and the Remuneration Committee. The directors have a duty to promote the company's long-term success while also considering the interests of various stakeholders. Information about their annual general meeting, AGM, and other governance matters is available to shareholders. Adhering to those established corporate governance practices is usually seen as a positive sign for investors.
Right. It provides a framework for accountability and transparency. Now, let's move to our final chapter before we wrap up. Chapter 6, Risk Assessment. What are the major strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats BAE Systems faces?
All right, so starting with their strengths, BAE Systems has a very strong global presence. They have a diverse product portfolio, a robust R&D program that gives them a technological edge, and strong relationships with government clients around the world. Their brand reputation is strong. They benefit from economies of scale. They also hold incumbent positions on lots of long-term defense programs, which provides a degree of revenue stability.
So a lot to like there. What about their weaknesses? Where might they be vulnerable?
Some key weaknesses are their heavy dependence on government contracts, which makes them susceptible to political and budgetary changes.
Right.
They also face geopolitical risks due to their global operations. Their exposure to commercial markets outside of defense is quite limited. Managing a company of this size and complexity can be challenging. And then there are those past allegations of unethical conduct, which, although they've taken steps to address them, do still pose a reputational risk.
Okay. Now, on the flip side, what are the opportunities BAE Systems could capitalize on?
Well, they could benefit from the expected rise in global defense spending driven by the current geopolitical uncertainties.
Right.
The rising demand for cybersecurity is also a major growth area for their cyber and intelligence division. Expansion into new markets offers further revenue diversification.
Okay.
Their R&D investments allow them to leverage those rapid technological advancements. And government initiatives to bolster domestic defense industries could also bring in more contracts.
So plenty of avenues for potential growth. Finally, what are the major threats that could hamper their future performance?
They face intense competition, of course, from other big players in defense and aerospace, Potential budget cuts or changes in government policies could impact their contracts.
For sure.
Keeping pace with rapid technological changes needs continuous and significant investment in R&D.
Right.
Strict regulations and safety standards can push up costs. Geopolitical instability can disrupt their operations and supply chains. And there are always risks associated with the availability of components and the performance of their subcontractors.
Right, so a very complex landscape of internal and external factors. All right, let's move to our concluding chapter, Chapter 7, brief conclusion. What are the key takeaways from our deep dive?
BAE Systems does present a compelling case for value investors. They operate in a growth industry. They have a massive order backlog that ensures revenue visibility. They have strong competitive advantages. They have a seasoned management team focused on shareholder value through dividends and buybacks. They're consistently profitable, and they have a reasonably solid balance sheet.
Right.
Market sentiment is positive. Analyst outlooks are mostly favorable, although that increase in short interest is something to keep in mind.
Right. And the key risks that potential investors should consider?
The dependence on government contracts, the geopolitical risks, intense competition, the highly regulated environment,
Okay.
and those past ethical concerns. While they've been addressed, they're still part of the company's history.
So overall, what's the verdict?
BAE Systems ticks a lot of the boxes when it comes to value investing. The business is understandable, they hold a strong position in their key markets, and they seem to have a management team committed to delivering shareholder value.
And now for the final thought. Given the rapid pace of technological advancement in defense and BAE Systems' focus on being a technology leader, how might disruptive emerging tech like AI and autonomous systems change things? Will they strengthen their advantages or maybe even disrupt their market position? It's an interesting question to ponder.
Definitely. It raises questions about the future of warfare and the role of established players like BAE Systems.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our in-depth look at BAE Systems. We've covered their business model, their financial health, the risks and opportunities they face. Hopefully, you now have a better understanding of this global defense giant.
It's a fascinating industry that's constantly evolving, shaped by both geopolitical shifts and those technological breakthroughs.
If you found this analysis valuable and you're interested in similar deep dives, make sure you subscribe to the Stock Analytics AIYT channel for more in-depth company analyses.
And a reminder that this discussion was for research and information purposes only and is not financial advice. Please do your own thorough research before making any investment decisions.
Right.
You may see stock suggestions in the comments, but those are not part of our analysis.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back with another fascinating company soon.